So this video is going to be talking about speaking on multiple planes at one time. So this is an interesting kind of experience because some people call it the 5D, some people call it telepathy, some people call it concept communication. Basically what it is a sending of an understanding and a kind of it's basically sending two messages at one time. It's using the words in your mouth, but at the same time sending feelings and also other interpretations of the word. So it's like, you have normal interpretation of a word when somebody speaks, and then you have face value what the words that they're saying mean. But then you have other ways that you can interpret words. So if I were to speak in a different way, then you would interpret the words differently, you see? But if I were to speak in a different way, then you would interpret the words differently. But if I were to speak in a different way, then you would interpret the words differently. You see? All of this is basically, this was me repeating the same thing 3 different times to show you 3 different ways of experiencing that same speaking. You see what I mean? Like one thing had one message, one thing had another message, and then one thing had another message, and they were all conveyed via the way that I spoke the words, my articulation, and my emotions that I was experiencing while articulating the words. And then other kinds of things that you've experienced before also kind of come into play there too, like different personality types and archetypes that you have going on in your mind, right? Like you see other people, and then your mind automatically interprets an archetype, right? So if you start to understand those archetypes really well, not by studying, but by just allowing the base brain to kind of access that information by being absent-minded, but not absent-minded in a negative way. It's like you move the ego away from the mind in order to allow the kind of like already, it's like a consciousness that is more intelligent than you are, like to move through you in order to move things out from you as well. But basically, this is a art almost of articulation. It's an it's articulation in a way where you start to be able to understand multiple things at one time. So you hear the words, but it's almost like, and sometimes it's so powerful with some people that you hear the words and your brain just completely tones out the words and then starts to pick up the other messages, and you just purely hear those other messages, and you know that other person knows that they're sending the messages, even if they don't. Because I've had this kind of communication with people before, some people that I knew what was happening. I knew they knew what was happening, but they were still like acting like they didn't know. And at the time that bothered me because like I didn't know if I was going crazy or if I was actually experiencing it or what. But now I've experienced it enough with enough people, many people, and had confirmations from many different people where I know that a lot of them were true and that they were actually experiencing the same thing that I was. And I've had these confirmations and I've had these kinds of like experiences enough now to where I can tell that it's a real thing and that it's not just a phenomena that I was experiencing with myself or with one other person. It's been kind of like validated through my own personal experience. But it's a very interesting kind of phenomena or feeling because it's something that, first of all, for me, it just came naturally. It was something that I just like, I didn't have to learn how to do it. I just automatically understood it. But the only thing was that the first thing, like when I first started interpreting that stuff and when it first started happening, I really started freaking out because I started picking up all the things from the other people that like my mind just immediately was attached to. So like all the negative things that my mind was attached to in myself, I started picking up from all the other people around me as well. And then also it was the opposite way as well. I started projecting all of the things that were going on in my mind onto everybody else's kind of like experience. And then I started only hearing everything that my mind was saying, even from the other people's mouths. like everything that the other people said felt like it just validated everything that I was thinking at that moment. And so like you have to be very careful with that, because it's like yeah, just understand that this kind of wavelength will put you in a space where you have to be really kind of like aware of yourself and aware of your own frequency, so that you don't get your frequency mixed up with other people's frequencies, because this is a level of communication that's not based in form. So it's something that can easily get like misinterpreted if one of the parties is not like on the same wavelength as the other person, but the other person thinks that they are, you know. That's when it gets kind of confusing as well, because you could be very close and some people could pick up some things but not other things, you know. So it just really depends. It's almost like you're taking your mental, like imagine that you have like every time that you think about something, like you're sending off a little like a fiber optic cable out of your mind. But it's not, that's a good expression too, like, or a good metaphor or whatever, but it's not fiber, it's like a etheric fiber optic cable, you know. It's or like a energetic fiber optic cable, and you're sending it off to whatever you think about, and then you're making an internet connection between you and that thing. And so you're doing that with everybody that you speak with as well. But when you have that like energetic connection between the thing that you're kind of thinking about, then all of a sudden you start pulling energy from that thing as well. So you have to also be aware of where your energy is going, so that you can start to understand where energies are coming from and what's going on between you and the other person. And you can start to feel if the other person is going to be able to or be capable of being on the same wavelength. And the way that I do it is that I start sending like we'll be speaking about something, and then I will hear a message through some of the words that the person's saying, and I wouldn't have heard any of the words that they were saying, but then I will answer verbally. I will literally answer the message that I heard in my mind verbally, and then the other person will look at me and confirm that that's what they meant, even though they knew, like it's hard to explain, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you can tell by doing these kind of like things. Like, so you basically like literally say that somebody is talking about crystals, but in the way that they're talking about the crystals, say that they're like, this here fluorite right here is really pretty. Like, it's hard to do it, or to like put a direction to it, but basically like they're just speaking normal words or whatever, but then you get a message that they're like talking about some other communication with that you had at some other point in time, or like they're bringing up this kind of like existential kind of awareness, and then you just kind of like start talking about that existential awareness out loud instead of the words that they're saying. And then they just respond to you as if there was no skip or gap in conversation whatsoever, and they start talking to you about the existential stuff immediately, as if there was no difference in the conversation at all. That is like a confirmation. You see what I mean? And that's happened a bunch of times. And that's not just, I've also done it verbally and had confirmation of like, did we just have this like telepathic experience? And a bunch of people have also said yes to that as well. The thing is though, that it just depends on the level that people are picking up on it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's almost like you have this radio, but like, it's like your mind and like the direction that you put your focus, like you can infinitely narrow your focus, or you can infinitely broaden your focus. But we just get taught, like, you've been so used to looking in this kind of way or whatever, that you haven't realized that you have an infinite kind of like spectrum that you can work with. So when you infinitely broaden it, then what happens is that you experience God consciousness, you experience the fact that you are one with everything, you experience it, that you're everything around you, and that you are like literally life itself. And there's no way that you can die. There's no way that you were ever born. There's no such thing as time. It's literally just like you're just here right now experiencing this, and this is what you are. And then if you narrowly, infinitely bring it down this way, then all of a sudden you can literally just like pinpoint your focus on something and just experience it as if it's real. You like, if you had an infinite ability to be able to do that, you could just manifest form into existence. Like, that's basically like what's happening here, is that like the focus of God itself is being focused infinitely into these forms, and then we are like that focused energy. like being expressed, but then we go back into the thing that's being focused, because we are just like, we're like the other end of that fiber optic connection between like a God. And when I say God, I mean like just universal consciousness. I mean like oneness, source energy, other word, you know what I mean, like God. Anyways, so like like that fiber optic cable, like we are like over here on the other end of it, and like we're just receiving that internet connection. And then whenever God decides to stop sending that internet connection, then the cable gets retracted back, and then it's just, all it is just the internet at that point. And then what that means is that it's information floating in nothingness, and there's no form to it, but it's still there. So like imagine literally just the feeling of love. That's kind of like what it is. It's just like, if you just imagine feeling love, but like nothing else. That's it. Just like there's no, you don't see anything, you just feel love. And like it's like that feeling that you have at the tip of an orgasm is like the amount of love the Creator has for each and every one of us. And like that's just a very small fraction of that love being expressed through this smaller fraction of an infinitely smaller fraction of love. And yeah, it's very interesting. Just like, I don't know, because once you start to realize that, you start to realize it more and more, and then you start to experience it like as you realize it, like as you start to be like, wow, I am love. Then you just, all of a sudden you get this hint of love, and you're like, wow, oh wait, I am that. Wow. And then like all of a sudden you can go onto this tangent or like thing in your mind where you just start to realize that you can manufacture and make feelings and emotions and thoughts and everything for yourself, because you are everything in existence. And I know the ego brings you back in and brings you back in, but the more that you exercise this understanding and knowledge, the more that it becomes a reality for you. So it's like, and then that validates what you were saying in the first place, and then therefore it's like you don't even have to convince yourself of anything, because you know that it's real, because you're experiencing it in your reality. You see what I mean? And so it's like, but you have to start with it, you know, you have to start like allowing yourself to experience that, and you have to start like allowing yourself to manufacture love for yourself. Like the other day, I literally allowed myself to fall in love with my water. Like I just looked at it and I started crying, literally, and I started looking at it as if I had like hadn't seen this lover in like ages, and it just allowed myself to just fall in love with the water. And then I drank it and it just felt really good. You know what I mean? But like the whole point is to like to really experiment with your consciousness, and experiment with your emotions, and experiment with like what you're capable of. And start with your own emotions, because you know that you are manufacturing your emotions, and you know that you're manufacturing your mind thoughts, right? So start to really put your attention on manufacturing really good emotions for yourself. And then like the first time that you do that and you really understand that, wow, I just did that. Like I literally just changed my feeling from feeling negative to feeling positive in the snap of a finger by literally just thinking of it differently. Like when you experience that for the first time, then you're going to literally just be like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I never knew this. And then you'll start doing it all the time, because it's so much better to just direct your thoughts back to things that feel good. You know what I mean? It's just like, you don't do it because you have to. You don't do it because you force yourself to. You don't do it because you have to like strictly control yourself and do all this stuff. Yes, that's part of it in a way, but you start doing that because you want to, and because it feels so good. Not because like you're forced to or anything like that. You literally you will naturally start doing the things that you need to do, just because the things that you need to do feel so good, and they just feel so fulfilling, and they feel so beautiful, and they feel so like right. You know, like that's how you really direct what it is. It's like what feels right to you, what feels good for you. That's the direction that you need to go in life. You know, in your feelings, your thoughts, emotions, everything. You know what I mean? Go by like, does this thought pattern feel good? No? Then why am I thinking it? Oh, I deserve to think this because I did this and this and this and this in my past. Is my past real? It is in my mind, but in reality, your past isn't real either. It's just a made up mind fiction. It's like, and the only thing that's real is what's going on right now. And if you were to let go of all your stories, then what you're experiencing right now would look completely different to you. It would not even look like the same reality. It would look like you were experiencing an alien world, and you would be experiencing complete bliss and joy, and you'd be laughing your ass off for no reason because it's so beautiful, literally. Like, but you won't even allow yourself to even comprehend that as being an option, but it is. And then it's like you can manufacture that for yourself just out of nothing because you are infinite consciousness. And I can validate this by I've experienced myself making emotions. I have a 13-minute long video of me meditating and allowing myself to just feel these like insane emotions, and I'll post it up on YouTube too. Like, it's just like it looks ridiculous though. It literally looks like I'm going insane, but it's like I'm sitting there just like blissing out for like minutes at a time, and I'm just like, by directing their focus, you know what I mean? But it's like it takes a second to get used to doing it, and like the more you do it, the more that you can get better at doing it. And it's not just me who is capable of doing it. Anybody is capable of doing it. And like I would call it, like, I feel like through the heart and through the feeling center is the easiest way to contact intelligent infinity. And then it's also through prayer as well. That's one of the easiest ways. But like it's not prayer in the same way that you think it is. It's prayer in a different way. It's like direct communication between you and an infinite source of consciousness. Literally, it's not like what you think prayer is. It's like a conversation. It's like but not even like you're not asking for anything. You're more just like communicating with this thing in order to share information and stuff like that. Like, it's different than what you think it is. And this thing is not separate from you either. This is like you're just communicating with this deeper aspect of yourself as well. So it's like this kind of like I don't know, you get to the point where you I don't know if I really want to go into that right now. Basically, you learn how to direct your consciousness and speak to yourself. But then yourself, like, you start hearing things that are not what you would normally hear, because you look at yourself as an infinite being and an infinite godly figure, and then you then speak to that rather than speaking to what you would normally call yourself. It's like you have this realization that you're infinite consciousness, and then you have this realization that you are God, and then you have this realization that you are this experience like of this body too, but that's also the same thing as that infinite consciousness in God. So that means that you are infinite consciousness and you have the same capabilities as infinite consciousness does. You're just limited to the capabilities of this human body as well. But once you start to expand the capabilities of the human body through diet and exercise, then you start to become more capable than really much of anybody that I've ever seen. And you start to like really experience connections, and like your mind starts working differently. You start having energy levels that are insane, and you start being able to like just understand things on a level that I never thought was possible. And you start just like experiencing life through this completely different way, because it's just, you start understanding things immediately, and you have connections are made in the weirdest ways, and it's like things just make sense in so many different ways. I don't even know how to explain it. I don't know why I went on that tangent either, but yeah, I think that's pretty good for right now, honestly. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to say. telepathy. Hopefully you could pick up on something. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.